The game is over, and now it's time to break down another showdown for Kyle Whittingham and the Utes.
Dylan Curtis is 1 for 2. Missed from 46, this from 45. And he hooked it off the upright. Rogers gets in, touchdown finally for Utah. And the Utes stick it in the end zone. Dampier lost the football, picks it up, looks around, end zone throw, caught! Oh, what a touchdown! Simmons got the foot down. That's a pass that's picked off. Jackson Betty with the interception. He has a pick 6 already this year. Betty streaking inside the 40. Betty is gonna get caught at the 20 and down at the 17. Dampier shotgun, third down. End zone, caught! Buchanan, touchdown! 16 yards. Dampier's numbers continue to grow.
This is the Ute Postgame Show on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Utah Postgame Show, Christian Esparza, Alex Napoles. Thank you for tuning in. Let's break it down, Alex. Utah gets the win, 31-6 at Wyoming in Laramie. It wasn't pretty, but a dub's a dub.
A dub's a dub. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, if you're a Utah fan, I think you're happy with 3-0. A couple of things. A lot of things I think in the passing game that I think Utah need to clean up. A lot of things when it comes to penalties that I think needs to be cleaned up. But ultimately, like I said, I think you're happy with 3-0 and you'll take 3-0 any day of the week.
Yeah, this is a great position for Utah to be in. And when we were in the offseason looking ahead to this season to start, there was no reason Utah shouldn't have been 3-0, right? And that was the thought all along. You got to be undefeated going into conference play. If this Utah team is to achieve everything that we hope that they're going to, everything that we know they can achieve, you've got to be 3-0 before Texas Tech rolls into town. And again, it was ugly at times. There's a lot that needs to be cleaned up in a week, right? But at the end of the day, you've got 3 wins. You've got 0 losses. Dampier is as advertised. Jason Beck is as advertised. The defense is probably even better than we thought, I should say. Like, we had high expectations, and this defense is lights out.
Defense has been playing phenomenal. Holding a Wyoming team who I think at times tonight did a fairly decent job of moving the ball. Right, it wasn't a Cal Poly where you knew the competition was going to be a little bit less, but at the same time, Wyoming, I thought, did a great job of moving the ball, and I thought Utah's defense did a good job responding even when they were moving the ball. Yeah.
And the part with the moving the ball, we got to start with this. This has been the biggest issue. It was a little bit of an issue last week. It was the big issue today. It's penalties, right? You look at the number, 10 accepted penalties for 100 yards against the Utes, and felt like they were a majority like holding calls and things like that, and things that just set you back 5 yards at a time, 10 yards at a time, and really uncharacteristic. I don't know if it's I got to be careful, but let's just say it was a Mountain West crew calling the game, right? No, that's a joke. I'll clarify. I'm joking. Okay. But like, seriously, it's uncharacteristic from Utah to not have discipline out on the field. So that was a little weird to have that many penalties in a game. But again, it popped up a little bit last week against Cal Poly. But eventually it's the same kind of pattern. Like, they figure it out at halftime. Second half goes a lot smoother. And of course they score a majority of their points, 28 points in the second half compared to just 3 in the third. So you got to clean the penalties up, because you can't hurt yourself against Texas Tech. You can't hurt yourself against Arizona State, against Iowa State, against those big dogs in the Big 12. You've got to be at the top of your game. So let's get it figured out right now.
100%. That's something that I think needs to desperately be cleaned up before you go and take Texas Tech on next week.
Yeah.
Because in that game against Texas Tech, those penalties could cost you a lot more than it did tonight against Wyoming. Obviously, in that first half, I feel like it cost Utah a lot. A lot of drives where Utah was moving the ball, but they just couldn't finish drives. They couldn't, put the exclamation point or the touchdown on the end of the drive because they ended up getting behind the sticks because of penalties. And, we'll talk about the kicking game as well. But at the end of the day, I feel like a big reason why you ended with just 3 points in that first half was because of the self-inflicted wounds and the self-inflicted errors that you gave yourself due to those penalties.
Yeah. Even looking at, some of these drives, like Utah was rolling, right? And then they'll take a sack or take a penalty and have to settle for a field goal. And it would be nice to convert those field goal tries into 3 points each, right? But at the end of the day, with a freshman kicker, like nothing's given. And you'd like to think that when you're in range and your kicker has a leg, right? And it's hard with Curtis setting the expectations so high, nailing his first field goal try ever, a 54-yarder. You think he can make everything at that point, and then the expectations kind of come back down to earth, and it's like, okay, there's going to be ups and downs, right? But don't take the sacks, don't take the incompletions, and you won't have to settle for field goals, and you won't have to put up with those misses. But it's tough because again, it's not like, and Wyoming's defense played good. We knew that they weren't going to be Swiss cheese. But I would say the majority of Utah's offensive struggles came from themselves, right?
Yes, 100%. Whether it was penalties, and honestly, I thought a large part of it had to do with not being able to convert third downs. One of the big things that, coming into this game, Utah led the nation in third down conversions, and I think there was times where you almost expected Utah to get the third down conversion. You almost you thought it was a given to get the third down conversion, but Wyoming's defense either stood up well or, again, self-inflicted penalties ended up putting you back a little bit more. But the third down conversion, specifically in that first half, it wasn't as great as we've seen Utah be up to this point of the season.
They finished 9 of 15 on third down, that's not bad, right? You're still over 50%, which is a really good number. But again, you mentioned coming into the game, they even put out a tweet leading the nation in third down conversion rate. So maybe they jinxed themselves or something, right? But just uncharacteristic. But then you look through, like, this is the same thing with Cal Poly. Like, it feels so similar, right? Because they scored 63 points last week, but then we were so nitpicky in the postgame. Like, they won 31-6 tonight. They had over 500 yards of offense, 541 yards of total offense, 230 through the air, 300 on the ground, right? Devin Dampier was phenomenal. He was doing it all. And that's what gives you, I guess, hope. That's what makes you feel better about this Utah offense, because you know that if they can just clean up those dang penalties, like these guys, we saw it against UCLA in week 1, the way they executed that 20-play drive, we know that's the potential of this Utah offense. They got to clean up the penalties. They got to help themselves out there by not making life hard.
Yes, 100%. You saw, I guess, what could potentially be the ceiling for Utah's offense against UCLA, and then they've kind of stalled out due to penalties the last 2 weeks, right? The slow start against Cal Poly last week, and the definite slow start against the Wyoming Cowboys tonight. But ultimately, at the end of the day, right, despite starting sluggish, despite starting, having a bad start on offense, you still put up phenomenal numbers. 230 yards through the air for Devin Dampier. I think that's great. And then at the same time, you put up 311 yards rushing.
Awesome.
The rushing attack tonight was phenomenal, even though, again, you only put up 3 points in that first half.
And my favorite part is, like, I'm looking at the totals right now. 86 for Dampier, he led the team. 80 for Wayshawn Parker, 62 for Hunter Andrews, 60 for Nakari Rogers. So you've got over 311. You've got 311 yards of on the ground, split between 4 dudes essentially, right? And
right.
This morning we were talking about a 3-headed rushing attack, and I wasn't sure how much Hunter Andrews we would continue to see. but I think it's pretty clear that he's got, a solidified role for this team, because especially to open the second half, they open it with a Hunter Andrews run, and then they put him back as a tight end and they throw a little short pass to him and he takes that for a few yards as well. So I think he's a fun little piece of this offense that I didn't think that they'd be utilizing as much as they are, but
right.
Between Andrews and Davis and obviously Snowden, and then you've got Merriweather back and Bentley and Buchanan, like these guys there's so many options in the passing game that it felt like that was not a luxury last year or the year before. So I wrote down on my notes, Jason Beck. I liked that first drive of the second half. They opened it and it felt like that was kind of like it was a 10-play, 83-yard drive. It took up 4 minutes of clock. It was like, okay, we need a touchdown here. They knew that. And it just felt like they came in and really settled in right there.
But absolutely. Once it came out in the second half, right? You end the first half missing the field goal. And I think my biggest question was just going to be, of course, how does Utah come out and respond to missing 3 straight field goals? Because that can hurt that I think itself can hurt the confidence of a team, right? Not just in the special units, not just in the kicking game, but I mean just the offense as a whole. I think that can bruise up your confidence a little bit, but I think Utah came out and responded well in that second half. And it goes to show that first drive, I think, is a perfect way to respond after maybe not being able to, of course, finish your drives in that first half and things not going the way that maybe you thought you wanted them to go in that first half. So coming out and getting the touchdown, Nakari Rogers finding the end zone.
After 3 tries, nonetheless.
After 3 tries. It did take a little bit, but eventually they got there. But I think that that does wonders for your confidence. And of course, I wonder if Utah's not able to convert or not able to score coming out right out of the gates, how that affects their psyche, how that affects the confidence. But luckily, I guess we'll never know because Utah's able to go out there and score the touchdown.
You're right, because so you bring up the missed field goal at the end of the first half for Utah, right? But the drive before that was the Nate Johnson fumble. The drive before that, you had the punt. It was a 3-and-out. And then the drive before that was another missed field goal. And then the drive before that was another missed field goal. So it felt like Utah was just not able to do anything at all. And we got to talk about the Nate Johnson fumble, because that getting into the red zone, and it felt like that was the point where things were going to turn around and they were going to score a touchdown. And then you've got a key player putting the ball on the ground and giving the ball right back to Wyoming after an awesome strip sack, by the way, by John Henry Daly, who we're going to talk about here in a second. Had a phenomenal game. But, you get the takeaway. You're in prime position to finally put a touchdown on the board, and then you fumble it away. And it really felt like that Utah offense was ice cold in the first half. So all in all, I think you put it great. Like, that first drive of the second half was so important to just get the train back on the tracks. It's Kyle Whittingham settling his troops, saying, guys, we got this. We know we are the better team here. Let's just go get some points on the board and start rolling now.
100%. And you do feel for Nate Johnson. Came in on the sweep, had a big run. Utah in the red zone. It looked like they were going to finally get on the board with a touchdown. Set up in perfect field position, and then you have the fumble. Do feel bad for Nate Johnson in that situation, but ball security is so important, especially in the red zone, right? You cannot turn the ball over in the red zone. I feel like turnovers itself are inexcusable, but even more so when you're in the red zone, right? You have to punch those in. You have to capitalize on those opportunities. Mm-hmm. But you do feel a bit for Nate Johnson, because it seemed like he was pretty shaken up on the sideline every time the camera would pan to him the next 5 minutes, and they would show him with the towel over his head.
Inexcusable. I mean, Whittingham agrees. That was Nate Johnson's only touch of the game. He did not get the ball again after that. And that's the way it goes. When you've got so many mouths on offense, so many guys that the offensive staff trusts with the football, if you give the ball away to the other team, you're not getting it again the rest of the night. And, I think Whittingham has been pretty clear about that throughout his career. So real quick, I want to talk about John Henry Daly. I wrote right here, this is what I do during these games. I write notes. I write cheesy little slogans.
Okay.
Let's see how I do. All right. JHD MVP.
Hey, there you go.
Right?
I like that one. It's a lot better than your animal joke last week.
Yeah, we don't have to bring that one up. No, but John Henry Daly, I mean, that strip sack was textbook. And later in the game, in the third or maybe early fourth quarter, he had a really awesome spin move that it forced an incompletion. But it was huge because he got back into the quarterback's face in less than 2 seconds, and the quarterback had no idea what to do. He had to throw the ball away, and Henry Daly actually batted it out of the air too. Oh, yeah. He's a phenomenal player. What do you have? 2 sacks or a sack and a half tonight, and continues to be on the national leaderboard for sacks on the season. And he is just making a phenomenal impact every single game. 2 sacks, 2 TFLs, 6 total tackles, his official stat line to end the night, and a pass defended, right? So
and don't forget the strip sack.
Right. And
he forcing the fumble
that Lander Barton picked up. So Utah's got one of them ones on their defensive line, and they always do. PNWU chiming in, hashtag JHD MVP. Let's get it going.
It's going to catch on now.
You heard it here first. I love it, man. He's been so much fun these first 3 weeks.
Absolutely. And I mean, we talked about him this morning too, about he was one of those guys that coming into the season, right, flying under the radar. I don't think a lot of people were talking to him or talking about him really a lot coming into the season, but he stepped up, and he stepped up in a massive, massive way for this Utah defense. The numbers that he's putting up, I thought were going to be the numbers that Logan, we were going to see from Logan Fano at this point of the season, but it's been John Henry Daly who's been the wrecking ball. He's been the wrecking crew for Utah. He's been phenomenal. And I hope that he can just continue those type of performances now as we get into Big 12 play.
Oh, he's going to, right. I mean, that's not updated. His ESPN says 3 sacks, but he had 2 more tonight. So that's 5 sacks through 3 games. He has been all over. He has been an absolute game wrecker, and he has been an absolute stud. And I just know that Scally is pumped to have another guy come in, and it seems like out of nowhere, because you've got some guys like a Logan Fano or like a Lander Barton, where you see flashes and then they get into like their junior or senior year, and it's like, okay, this dude is going to be one of the leaders on this team. John Henry Daly is a local kid, right? And some people had been talking about him a little bit, but he really flew under the radar, especially because he committed to BYU and then ended up transferring to Utah. And it was like, okay, I don't know if we're ever going to really see this kid. He's been in the program for a little bit, but I mean, from that UCLA game on, it was like, okay, whatever he did in the offseason, like he's really grown into his role. He's really figuring his stuff out, and it's showing. Again, 3 games, 5 sacks, the textbook strip sack, setting up your offense in great positions. It's been great.
Yes. The only knock, of course, on that is, unfortunately, Utah's offense wasn't able to capitalize on the sack because Nate Johnson in turn fumbled. But still, again, it's good for your offense to know that your defense can come up with those type of plays to set you up in great field position, right? I think when you're able to turn the ball over the way like that, whether it's the sack, whether it's Benny getting his second INT in a week or in 2 weeks straight, it sets up and it gives your confidence. It gives confidence to your offense that you're able to get the ball in great field position, and then in turn, hopefully, you're able to score off of those. And so I think that is a perfect combination for Utah. It's something that I think last season, despite the defense and how great they were, the turnovers to help set up your offense were at times missing.
The takeaways
were at times missing, but this year so far so great for this Utah defense.
Man, I'm looking at that 311 rushing yards number, and I can't wrap my hand around that. It's crazy. They just, again, like week 1, I used this term. I said death by 1,000 paper cuts, and that's, again, it feels that way because you're not having these long breakout runs. The longest run of the night, 23-yard run. Dampier and Nakari Rogers each had a 23-yard run. Parker and Andrews each had a 20-yard run as well. So it's not like, you're giving your best player the ball and he's taking it 75 yards to the house. These are whoever you give the ball to, they are getting 4, 5, 6 yards a pop. They technically average 6.9 yards a pop. And they are just going to boom, 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 pick up those positive yards. And there's not a lot of negative rushes in there.
Yeah.
And that's just, it's moving the ball forward slowly but surely. And again, the drives stall out because of penalties or because of sacks. But when you've got a rushing attack that is that, I was going to say potent, but it doesn't feel potent because you've got 4 different guys that are going to run the ball, right? When you've got a rushing attack that is that strong, I guess, and that reliable, that's going to translate no matter who you're playing.
Yeah, no, I think reliable is a great word for it because, you see whether it's Wayshawn Parker lining up at the backfield, whether it's Nakari Rogers in the backfield, whether it's Hunter Andrews taking direct snaps. A lot of direct snaps to Hunter Andrews tonight, and even a couple to Wayshawn Parker. But whoever it is taking the direct snaps in a wildcat formation and using his legs to create the play himself. This Utah team right now has, we called it a 3-headed monster last week with Devin Dampier, with Rogers and with Parker.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think we have to start giving a little bit more respect to Hunter Andrews in that rushing game, man. He ran all over Wyoming's defense tonight. And, I thought it was interesting because in that first half, it seemed like Utah was trying to favor a passing game. They went 14 for 25 just in the passing game alone, 25 attempts to 23 rushing attempts, right? So it was a little bit more balanced, but I would have liked to see a little bit more in the rushing attack because it seemed like in the first half, the rushing attack was moving the ball better than Utah was moving it through the air.
Yeah.
In the first half, you only had 112 passing yards versus 155 rushing yards. And so I understand why Utah's, trying to air it out and trying to establish a little bit more too of a passing game, but ultimately it was the run game tonight that was effective. That worked really well for Utah. And I wish they would have ran just a little bit more in that first half to maybe try to find that end zone in that first half. But ultimately, the running game takes control in the second half, and we see that with the 311 rushing yards.
Man, I love Hunter Andrews. The more that I watch him, the more I really like him. Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't he commit to Utah as a linebacker?
That's right.
And then last year they were like, okay, we're moving this Hunter Andrews kid because he was a true freshman. I think they were like, we're moving him to running back. We like the way he can run the football. And
yeah,
he never really was able to make his way onto the field last year. And then this year they're like, okay, Hunter Andrews is a tight end now. And it's like, oh man, this kid has changed positions twice in 2 years. Like that doesn't really work out most of the time. But then, as I mentioned earlier, and you brought up, like he's lining up at running back, he's lining up in the Wildcat, he's lining up as a slot, as a wing, as a tight end, and he's more of like kind of a gadget role player. Yeah. And it seems like Beck has really figured out how to utilize him.
Yeah, he's almost positionless at times, man.
Yeah,
he'll line up anywhere and everywhere and find ways to make plays, and I think that's great for Utah.
He finished again, 6 rushes for 62 yards, and then he had 5 catches for 44 yards. So that is dang near 100 total yards for this dude that he's going to be all over. And I brought up after last week, I was like, I mean, we saw him a lot against Cal Poly. I don't know how often we're going to see him throughout the year, but this is a Wyoming game that they needed to get some momentum on offense. And they opened the second half with back-to-back Hunter Andrews plays. So
right.
That signals to me that he's going to play a big role on this offense moving forward. And I like what I've seen so far. I really don't think I've seen any negative plays when they choose to give the ball to him.
No, so far he's had a great start to the season. I think so far on the season, just has the 3 reception for 19 yards. But I think what's separating him and what's allowing him to be so fun to watch is the production that he's able to also add to your rushing game, which of course we see tonight against Wyoming. Again, a positionless guy who can come in and make big plays for you. in just about any position on the field. Jason Beck has to love what he sees from Hunter Andrews.
And I'm sure Jason Beck also loved Wayshawn Parker's hurdle.
Oh, man.
That was when I saw that, the thought that went through my mind was like, when you're running the ball, what makes you want to do that? But he did it, and it looked good. It was cool.
He had the confidence to do it, and it looked great. And I think
wish we could all be so lucky to jump over another human. And he was standing up too. Like the defender wasn't even.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes they'll do that because the defenders dive at their knees or whatever. That defender was standing straight up.
Yeah.
And Wayshawn Parker just jumped over it.
Yes.
So that was awesome.
It was awesome, and again, every time I watch him run, and every time I watch him do something great like that, I have to remind myself that this kid's a sophomore, right? This kid's a sophomore, and he's doing things like that. Wayshawn Parker, man, I think the ceiling is incredibly high for this kid, and as he continues to grow in this offense, and as we continue to see him more and more, I thought, it seemed like he was a little bit limited in the first half, but once he really took off and really got going in that second half, I mean, you finished the night with 80 yards. That's a pretty good stat line for a sophomore.
On 10 carries as well. So that's pretty phenomenal. What do you think the coaches say when they've got guys out there hurdling defenders? Do you think they're like, "Hey, high five, nice play," or do you think they're like, "Hey,
let's no, I think, I could see it going both ways. I could see, the running back coach and Mark Atuaya, he heads over to the sideline. And Atuaya is pumped up and fired up for him. But then I can see a guy like Kyle Whittingham being like, "Hey, let's not do that because we've not had the best luck with injuries."
That's a good point.
You gotta have that little that little reminder in the back of your head, and so I'm sure everybody's fired up, but at the same time they're like, "Hey, let's be careful out there."
But you know what? For us, like, it looks cool.
Yes, it's a highlight reel play. I'm sure everybody will be talking about it at the end of the year as one of their favorite moments of the season, just because it was so fun to watch.
You think of 52-yard touchdown reception last week, and then the awesome hurdle this week. Like, you give the ball to Wayshawn Parker, and good things are going to happen. You're going to have some highlights. So, David Ute fan chiming in. Didn't Nate have trouble hanging onto the ball before he went to Vandy? I think so. I Googled it. Google AI is telling me 7 fumbles in 2023.
Google AI. Sometimes it's a lot. Yeah, no. If I remember right, and when I remember right, I think at one point Nate Johnson was benched, and they went back to Bryson because
he was fumbling the ball.
Right. Of course, there's the fumbles, and then there was the inability to move the ball on offense at some points, and so that's one of the reasons, if I remember correctly, one of the reasons why we saw the switch off between Bryson and Nate Johnson back in that 2023 season, when Utah ended 8-4 on the year.
Yeah, that was a tough year, and it's hard going back and forth in between multiple quarterbacks. And part of the reason you had to go back and forth is because one of the dudes couldn't hold on to the ball. So,
real quick, before we have to hit our break or anything, we got to talk about Devin Dampier and the whatever happened on that third touchdown.
I was going to save that, but yeah, let's bring it up.
Okay,
let's bring it up.
First,
he was eating a Butterfinger on the sideline or something.
Apparently had a little bit of some Butterfinger situation going on. Drops the ball, but I think the awareness, right, to go back and make sure to pick up that ball, and then a massive credit to the offensive line for allowing him to still have time to pick up the ball and get the ball down, right? Because he still had like 4 seconds to get the ball off.
That's what stood out to me. Yeah. As soon as he picked it up, it's like, oh, dude, you got to run. But then it's like, wait a second. There was
nobody in the backfield with him. And I think that's credit to the offensive line. And then again, massive credit to Devin Dampier for having the awareness to pick up the ball, to look up into the end zone and to find Larry Simmons. Simmons, who pulls in his first touchdown catch of the season. So big congratulations to him, but phenomenal from Devin Dampier. Everything about that play, I think, should excite Utah fans. Obviously you want him to hold on to the ball, but to have that awareness and that ability to make something out of nothing, that's one of the reasons why I think Devin Dampier is so special.
He's a wonderful athlete. And that's really what it boils down to. And I think the broadcast said it best. Like, that was just backyard style football. That's a dude that's like, it reminds me of Little League, right? Who's the quarterback in Little League? Either the coach's son or the best athlete on the team. And that's what Devin Dampier's got going on. And I do think he had some really nice throws tonight. I think he had a few. There was one downfield to Tobias Merriweather that went right through Merriweather's fingertips, maybe a little overthrown, but it also looked like Merriweather slowed up on his route a little bit. I really think Merriweather could have got there, and that could have been a huge, like 35 or 40-yard passing play for Utah's offense. But back to my point, I mean, Dampier is a phenomenal athlete, and I think he's still growing as a passer because this is, it's new team, new teammates, new chemistry. You've got guys like Merriweather who you haven't played with every single game, right? You're getting new receivers every game, but the bottom line, like, you have that play where it slips through your fingertips. It's a dumb mistake. It's a dumb mistake that hardly ever happens, but when it does, some guys panic. Some guys are like, okay, I'm going to make the best of this. And he throws it to Simmons. And what a phenomenal job by Simmons, by the way, to use his big body and box out the DB. I thought that was a great catch right on the sideline and hauling that thing in. And I think that, like, once Utah scored that touchdown, that was kind of the sigh of relief. Like,
I think so.
Okay, we're settling in. We're going to win this game. Let's go
home. That pass to Larry was phenomenal, and then of course, massive credit to the absolute dime that he dropped to JJ Buchanan in the end zone for that second passing touchdown. Almost, in a way, a very similar throw, and a similar catch from JJ Buchanan from a true freshman. So phenomenal for Devin Dampier to see that in the red zone again. Similar to what, like we were talking about earlier, when you're in the red zone, you have to capitalize on the situations. You have to punch it in. You have to put the exclamation point on the drive and get the score. So it was great. A good contrast to see from what Utah was able to do in that first half in their inability to find the end zone, to Devin Dampier dropping some dimes into the end zone for some touchdown scores, man.
And you know what? He had an absolute dot to Dallin Bentley last week as well for a touchdown. So maybe it's just once you get into the red zone, Dampier turns into Tom Brady or something. I don't know. But he really has, for a guy that, a lot of people were out there were like, oh, he's a running back. He can't throw the ball past 5 yards. Like, he has really made some incredible throws. And I know that his legs are always going to be what makes him a special player. And that's awesome. And he does great things. But he can throw the freaking football. All right.
He can.
He makes it look good. And he's got a few highlight touchdown passes through 3 games already.
Mr. Reliable, number 9, Ryan Davis, 10 catches, 91 yards for the leading receiver. We talked about him a little bit too this morning, of him kind of emerging out of nowhere. We see the chemistry that him and Devin Dampier have already, from playing in New Mexico. He's becoming, again, Mr. Reliable. For Devin Dampier, anytime that he's in a situation where, he's trying to get the ball out, he typically has the tendency to find Ryan Davis. And Ryan Davis does a good job of making plays, man. I like what I've seen from number 9.
It felt like there was one drive where he had, I think, 3 catches, 3 or 4 of his 9 catches on one drive. I'm trying to pull up the drive chart. It might have been the drive to open the second half. No, it wasn't. It was later. Anyways, but Mr. Reliable, I think, is the way to put it. Like, the way that the game was called in the second half was a lot different than in the first half. We saw a lot more like boot action rollouts and just sprint out and then hitting players in the flats. And that's where you see Ryan Davis doing damage, right? He's just lining up in the slot and he'll run a little flat route and boom, Dampier hits him real quick. Or you'll run a rub route or a pick route and Ryan Davis is right there, just quick 3-4 yards a pop. And, that's how you end up with, you've got 9 catches when the next highest player had 5. So this is a dude that Dampier is very comfortable with. And clearly the chemistry is compounding on from last year. So that's really good. We got to take a break. We will continue to break down Utah's 31-6 win over Wyoming. Quick break here. We'll go about 3 minutes. We'll call it. Sound good?
Sounds good to me, man.
We'll be back after this quick break. It is the Ute Postgame Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
This is the Ute Postgame Show on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Welcome back to the Ute Postgame Show, brought to you by the KSL Sports Zone. I'm Christian Esparza. Alex Napoles joining me as always. We are breaking down Utah's 31-6 win over the Wyoming Cowboys. Again, we are live on YouTube, we're live on X, we're live on Facebook. Chime in, let us know what you thought about the Utes' big win tonight. They're 3-0, rolling. You got Texas Tech coming in next week. It's good to be a Ute fan, right, Alex?
It's a great time.
I'm assuming.
Great time for the Ute fans right now. Like we mentioned at the top of the post-game show, right? You'll take 3-0 every single day of the week. Now, and I think that just adds a little bit more to that Texas Tech game next week, man. Both teams will be heading into that 3-0 first conference game. I'm excited to get into that one, but we still got a little bit more to break down from this Wyoming game.
Yeah. Anywhere you want to start particularly, or jump back in, I guess?
I think ultimately, I think the defense did a great job, man. I think it's unfortunate that they weren't able to hold them to 0. I thought for a little bit there they were. But Wyoming, I think, started moving the ball nicely in that fourth quarter. Great recognition from Jackson Benny on the overthrow from Anderson to be able to pick it off. Again, great return to set up the offense to score some points. But I think, defensively, there were times where Anderson made some good throws and that Wyoming offense was able to make some decent plays. A little bit, to what we were talking about with coverage breakdowns against Cal Poly. We saw that a little bit again tonight, but I don't think it's any reason for concern at the moment.
Dude, Benny was like this close to having pick sixes in back-to-back weeks.
I know.
That was awesome. I think he is the next great Ute DB in a very, very, very long line of great Ute DBs. I think what we're seeing from him in his first year as a full-time player on offense and defense making plays. So that's great. I totally agree though with the miscues on defense. It's just little things. And sometimes it's like on third downs, right? That's when it hurts the most. And that's when you seem to get it. The one that frustrated me, it was the touchdown from Kelman. You're in a short yardage situation. It was either 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1.
I think it was 4th.
And you're lined up. And of course, Utah's defense is always going to be man heavy, right? You've got 2 wide receivers on each side. You've got a tight end that runs across the field, but the 2 wide receivers run off the DBs deep, and nobody is there to fill in the gaps when they hand the ball off to the running back.
Yeah.
And, you have an opportunity to make a tackle in the backfield. I think it was Richie that was there, and he just slipped right off. And then because the wide receivers ran everybody else off, and it's in man coverage, their backs are turned. Nobody knew that the running back was basically untouched into the end zone after he broke that first tackle. So that was, I'm sure, pretty frustrating, especially like you said, you're in an opportunity to pitch a shutout, right? And they do miss the 2-point conversion. Wyoming does. So they only end the night with 6 points, but it's things on 3rd and 4th down like that. It's like, oh yeah, that's when you need to be playing at your best. That's when you can't have the mental lapses. So let's figure that out.
I think ultimately Wyoming finishes the night with they went 3 for 12 on 3rd down, which honestly, thinking back at the game, and maybe it was just the big plays that were converted on 3rd down that made it feel that way, but it felt like Utah was a little bit down on 3rd down this tonight when it came to stopping that Wyoming offense on 3rd down.
But there was 2 on 4th down,
which is great. And then of course you have it's missed tackles. I think that ultimately too pop out in my mind. We saw some missed tackles against UCLA. We saw some big not as much big missed tackles against Cal Poly, but again tonight you're seeing some missed tackles, and so I think at the end of the day you just want the tackling a little bit to improve from that Utah side.
Yeah, I would agree. I do think though, I mean, you held Anderson 108 yards, and of course he throws a pick. He was 12 of 23. And then, like you said, 3 of 12 on 3rd down. And it's like, big picture, you'll take that 12 out of 12 weeks. So
Right.
Utah's defense comes in, they do exactly what they're supposed to. They did allow 121 yards on the ground, but that was on 34 carries. So that's an average of 3.6, right? For the most part, Utah's defense was stifling as always. And you're seeing it. I think it starts up front with the big dudes, right? John Henry Daly, can't stop talking about him. And then you've got your linebackers, John Hall and Lander Barton, that are all over. It felt like Lander Barton was blitzing a lot tonight. But I don't know, man. I think that, Utah's defense has a lot of confidence, I guess, after these first 3 games.
And as they should. As they should. I thought against UCLA, they I think now we're seeing that maybe UCLA is a little bit broken after that Utah loss, but there was high hope for that UCLA offense, and they held that UCLA offense pretty dang well. And then, of course, you hold Cal Poly to just 6 points. You hold Wyoming to just 6 points again tonight. Despite them moving the ball nicely, like I said, in that fourth quarter, you're able to come up with big turnovers to help out to keep that score at just the 6. Turnovers have been huge for this Utah defense week in and week out, year after year. And it's great to see that carry over again from another Morgan Scalley defense.
Alex, you were a kicker in high school. What goes through Dylan Curtis's head tonight after finishing
you have to, whatever happened tonight for Dylan Curtis, you just have to move on quickly, right? You can't allow that to affect your confidence long term. I hope that the coaching staff and special teams are, they work that out, because special teams are going to be super important in Big 12 play. He's a true freshman kicker, so I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I think you kind of have to give him the benefit of the doubt. But 1 for 4, that's a glaring thing that pops out, and things that Utah needs to improve on quick. They gotta figure out that kicking game. But I have no doubt in my mind that Dylan Curtis seems like the type of person who can bounce back and be fine in the long run.
Kickers are weird, man. No offense to you. So
non-taken.
No, but like it seems like one bad miss really throws a kicker off, and you hope that they can confine that to just one night. And then you've got, luckily, that's the nice thing about football, right? You have a whole week to move on from it before your next game. So you hope that this is just a one night thing, and it sucks because it is a true freshman, and that, he's going to be hard on himself after he misses. He makes the first one, and then he misses, and then he misses again, and then he misses again. And it's like, dude, just take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Your offense is finally putting points on the board, right? You're not having to be relied upon to score all the points. I truly think that, again, hitting the 54-yarder in week 1, I think might have messed with some expectations, because that is pretty abnormal for a kicker. But we, at the same time, like, we know he has that ability going forward, and we know he has a leg. They're calling him Legatron. So that's cool. But, and then even on the kickoffs, like, he's kicking it out of the back of the end zone on every single kick. So, he's got the power, he has the accuracy in the past, and let's just hope this was one bad night that isn't going to stick with him.
Yeah.
But I know that he was probably pretty hard on himself, because that is a rough night.
I think as a true freshman, it's human nature to be hard on yourself, right? This is your 3rd collegiate game.
Yeah.
You come out and you miss that first one. And I feel like that second miss, the one that came off the upright,
the doink.
Yeah, the doink. You're a little bit in your head at that moment, right? You're a little bit in your head thinking about that last kick, and you walk up to the ball, and the only thing you can think about is don't miss. Yeah. But you end up missing, and that's just going to hurt your confidence a thousand times more. And then I think the block, it seemed like it seemed like it was a moment where he was trying to rush it and just hit it well enough to give that power to put it in, but ends up kicking it short. Phenomenal from the defensive lineman to jump up and get a hand on it. But you hope that as a true freshman, again, the coaching staff are pulling him aside in that locker room, especially at the halftime, man, and saying, hey, forget it, move on. and because we still trust in you. And I think right now that's going to be important to have the trust from the coaching staff if this kid's going to move on from what was a rough night.
Yeah, it's a game like this where I wish I could be a fly on the wall in that Ute locker room at halftime, right? You're up, 3-0 at half, but you had the opportunity to be up by 4
It should have been more.
It should have been a lot more at half. So I don't know. I think that Whittingham was probably pretty fired up. I don't know what sort of approach he takes, but I don't know. Whatever he did, it worked because they came out and looked a lot better in the second half, right? Alberto Barrios chiming in. What happened with the kicker? Even worse, those penalties. Can't play like that versus Texas Tech. Then he said 20 million yards in penalties.
It felt like it. It felt like it.
It was 100 yards, but it did feel like 20 million.
Tonight was just one of those nights. And you know, he's absolutely right. This is, I feel like this is a game where you can, again, get those penalties out of your system and get those miscues out of your system, because next week it's going to be a much tougher opponent, a much tougher test. And once you can't allow yourself to be behind the sticks as much as you were tonight against Wyoming. Again, in that first half score, heading in 3-0, credit to the defense for holding them to 0, but it should have been more. But unfortunately, you're just unable to capitalize with those penalties. And you know, that's a Texas Tech offense who earlier today looked great against Oregon State. And so, you know, if you're playing that type of offense and you're not allowing yourself to score points because of the miscues, because of the penalties, right, that can come back to bite you. You can't miss field goals against Texas Tech, and you can't have those penalties against Texas Tech. I think that's probably the most glaring issue I see from Utah coming out of this one tonight. Is those two things that need to be cleaned up so desperately before you head into that Texas Tech game on Saturday.
You think we're going to get a shootout next week?
It'd be fun to watch it.
that's what Tech's known for, right? They're known for their offense. Nobody has ever thought of defense when they think of Texas Tech. They opened the season against Arkansas Pine Bluff. They scored 67 points that week. Then against Kent State, they scored 62 points. Then today against Oregon State, they scored 45 points. Utah was able to cross the 60-point mark last week, right? But 43 points in week 1 and then 31 points tonight. And those scores aren't anything to scoff at. Those are fine numbers. But do you think that Utah's offense has the firepower to keep up in a shootout? Or do you think that they're going to want to try and control the clock, control the possession, and play the Utah game?
I think ultimately we will end up seeing them playing the Utah game, but that's mostly because I think more so Utah's defense has what it takes to keep up with Texas Tech's offense, right?
I'm so excited to see Utah's defense play a legit offense. Right?
Exactly. I think that will be more of a key to beating Texas Tech next week than the offense will be. I know you have to score to win, but you also have to stop Baron Morgan and that offense. And I think Utah's defense is up to the test to keep up with Texas Tech's ability to air it out, with their ability to score high. It's going to be a fun matchup and a great matchup to watch at Rice Eccles, man.
Yeah. I mean, they've allowed less than 30 points through 3 games. And I've been uber impressed with this defense. I think that they are very opportune, and you brought up earlier that they're getting takeaways, and we didn't see that last year. That was like the thing that was missing, was the takeaways, and it took them 3 quarters of the season to finally get their pick 6. This year we get it in week 2. We almost had another one tonight. So I think this is probably the culmination of, we talked about this a little bit this year. This is almost like a last dance sort of thing for Utah. You've got so many dudes on this roster that it's their final year with the program. You're thinking of guys like Lander Barton like that. And then, of course, with Whittingham and all the speculation around him. So it feels like everybody's peaking this year. And not only does it feel like that off the field, but watching the film, watching the games, like it really does feel like everybody's hitting their peak. And they're doing great. They're doing great things.
They're doing great things, and they'll have to continue. They'll have to continue it next week. Next week is going to be a massive, massive test. I think in the long run, having a loss early in the season might not hurt you as much, but still you want to start off conference play on the right foot in front of your home fans, no less, especially after the season you had last season, right? going losing 7 straight in conference play last year. That's got to leave a bad mouth in the taste of not only that coaching staff, but I mean of Utah fans in general. And so I think it's going to be super vital to the season to get off to a hot start in Big 12 play. And it starts next week against a very tough opponent.
Just looking through some of Texas Tech's stats from tonight, right? You brought up Baron Morton, 464 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, and interception tonight. You had 3 receivers put up 100 yards for Tech, Coy Eakin, Jacoby Williams, and Terrence Carter, all across the 100-yard mark. And the reason I bring that up is because we heard a lot of sound from Sharif Shah this week talking about he wants the corners to be more disciplined. We haven't heard what they have to say tonight, right? But we know after Cal Poly, they were really vocal about having a lot of wide receivers run open. And Cal Poly's quarterback wasn't able to hit them and make plays, but Shaw specifically said, like, that's not going to happen once we hit conference play. Like, once we start playing the good opponents, those quarterbacks are going to turn those into big plays. And so I am curious to see, because it's a big challenge. It's the biggest challenge that Utah's DBs and their defense is going to face probably all year, specifically talking about Texas Tech.
Yeah.
They've clearly got a really good quarterback. They've got several good wide receivers. And, you know, you've got Smith Snowden, who we know is one of the better corners, if not one of the best corners in the Big 12, but he's also playing an offensive role now. So how does everybody else step up? And then not to mention you lose Rabbit Evans, who made his way back today, and we saw him in his first action of the season, and not too far into the game, he leaves on the cart. So not a very encouraging sign there. Obviously, we don't have an update right now. We are going to get availability reports for Big 12 play, but it didn't look good for Rabbit Evans, and I don't want to speculate, but if I had to guess right now, I would guess that he won't be available for that game. You're already missing one of your top DBs. So that, I think, obviously, when you talk about big challenges, when you talk about the biggest storyline looking a week from today, it's going to be, how does Utah's defense hold up against that Tech offense?
Right. And I think right now, I think from what we've seen from Utah's defense from the first 3 games or so, is they have the capabilities to keep up with that offense. They have the capabilities to keep up with Baron Morton and Texas Tech's offense, and that high scoring offense. And so again, that we'll learn a lot about what Utah will be in the Big 12, I think, next Saturday against Texas Tech.
Do you think we learned anything tonight, or do you think that it was kind of just like, you know, ugly start, let's get the win and get out of Laramie?
No, I think
out of Laramie.
I think you learn that you need to clean up penalties, because it's a conversation we had last week in last week's postgame. It's a conversation we continue to have in this postgame, is you need to clean up whatever it is on offense, the slow start on offense, first of all. That needs to change. And then, of course, cleaning up the miscues, cleaning up shooting yourself in the foot, and putting yourself behind the sticks due to penalties. The 100 yards in penalty yardage, that's not by any means. I don't think Kyle Whittingham's happy with that. I don't think Jason Beck's happy with that. That needs to be cleaned up ASAP, because a team like Texas Tech can punish you for those.
Wyoming had 108 yards through the air, 121 yards on the ground, and then 100 yards in penalties. So they almost matched their rushing and passing totals each with their yardage in penalties. That's not good. That's not a good sign from Utah. And again, a lot of it seemed like holding penalties.
Yeah.
I don't know what the deal was. I don't know what the deal has been the last 2 weeks, because especially considering like Utah has not been known to be like a holy school. So that feels a little weird. Again, it's a new scheme. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but it also wasn't really an issue week 1.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting development over these last 2 weeks.
I think you're just mostly, you know, I feel like you're mostly used to seeing Utah's be a lot more disciplined and not, you know, get these silly penalties. And I'm still waiting, and I think most of the fan base is still waiting for Utah to kind of get back to that. And I really hope that they're able to do that against Texas Tech, because 2 million yards in penalties is no bueno.
Still waiting for Kyle Whittingham to wrap up his post-game presser. I don't know what the holdup is. I was thinking maybe he's just really ripping into these guys post-game. I genuinely would have thought that this would be a quick post-game tonight. I thought that Whittingham would get up to the podium, say, yes, nice win, even though it was an ugly start. Okay, let's get back to Salt Lake and on to Texas Tech. But clearly it's not. So I don't know what the deal is, but we are still awaiting that. So as soon as that wraps, we're going to get the audio sent to us and we'll let you guys hear it. But in the meantime, we'd like to hear some fan reaction, right? We are live on Facebook. We're live on YouTube. We're live on X. Let us know your thoughts on this game. Utah is starting the season 3-0, getting the win tonight, 31-6 over Wyoming up in Laramie. It was nice to get the win there. Haven't seen them play against Wyoming in 15 years, literally. So bit of a weird trip up to Laramie, but always nice to reignite an old rivalry, right?
Always good to face an old rival. It's just interesting how the schedule shook out, right? What was supposed to be your hardest test in UCLA came right out of the gates, and then you get the FCS team, and then you go up to Wyoming. Weird how it all shook out. I wasn't really sure what you would be able to get from playing what we thought, coming into the season, we're going to be lesser opponents after playing your tough opponent first. But ultimately, it turned out that Wyoming was maybe a bit tougher of an opponent than UCLA was. And so, you learn some things from Utah's offense. You learn some things from Utah in this game. But ultimately, I think that you're just happy to walk out of Laramie with a 31-6 win. In the second half, it felt like Utah was playing a lot more like the Utah we saw against UCLA, right? And I think that bodes well for Utah. The fact that you're moving the ball efficiently in the second half, you're scoring in the second half, that's uber important. And then, of course, how do you build on this performance, on that second half performance, right? And take that into Texas Tech and not really get caught up on the miscues and the mistakes that you made in that first half, and hopefully not take that into the Texas Tech game.
Utah scored a touchdown on all of their possessions in the second half. And
right.
So I really want to know what it was that Jason Beck saw, what it was that he adjusted to, because that is quite the contrast.
Credit to the coaching staff, man. Credit to the coaching staff for going into the halftime and making the necessary adjustments. It felt like the play calling, just in general in that second half, was a lot smoother and a lot better.
Yeah.
And we saw, packages like the Wildcat with Hunter Andrews that end up leading to explosive plays. And so again, second half felt a lot more like the UCLA performance that we saw from Utah, where they were quick, they were efficient, they were fun to watch, versus, the first half performance that we saw from Utah today.
All right. We're still waiting Kyle Whittingham to wrap up at the podium. As soon as we get that, we will play it ASAP. Can't wait to hear what Coach Witt says. But Alex, let's go ahead and take a break. And then hopefully it won't be too much longer until we hear from Kyle Whittingham. But we're going to go ahead and take like a quick 3-minute break, and then we will be right back. It's your Ute Postgame Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
the Ute Postgame Show on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Ute Postgame Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. I'm Christian Esparza, Alex Napoles with me. We are breaking down Utah's 31-6 win over Wyoming in Laramie. Alex, how good does it feel to get another win over Wyoming, right? It's been so long since these two programs have seen each other, but it's big bro going up into little bro's house and saying, you know what, I'm always going to be the boss, right?
Yeah, it has a little bit of a feeling to that, right? It feels like Wyoming is at this point where they're kind of
this is
getting
the Ute Postgame Show on
left
90.
behind in this in the new Mountain West, or I guess in the old Mountain West, right? In the new Mountain West, it feels like they're kind of getting left behind, and Utah's already made their move on to the Power Four. Nice to see old foes, I guess, but at the end and at the end of the day, it's fun to be able to walk into a hostile environment that is Laramie, and walk out with the win.
Did you know that Evans Svoboda was still on the team as a tight end?
I did not. No, that was an interesting surprise to see on the broadcast tonight.
Well, yeah, he caught the ball, and it's like Svoboda. I mean, that's not a very common last name. He's got to be related to the guy that was their quarterback. And then they're like, oh, yeah, that's Evans Svoboda. He was their quarterback last year. And I'll tell you what, I forgot he was built like that, because he does not look like a quarterback. And frankly, he didn't play like one last year. So I'm glad that they found a role for him outside of the offense. I do think that Anderson could be a baller. He made some nice passes tonight for the Cowboys. But, Utah getting the win after starting off 3 points in the first half due to, what was it? 2 missed field goals and a blocked field goal, right? So a lot of miscues there in the first half for the Utes, but ultimately Coach Witt lit a fire under them at halftime, and they came out. They scored a touchdown on all 4 of their drives in the second half.
And that, again, just what we were saying before the break, that second half was a lot more of the Utah that we saw against UCLA, the efficient quickly moving the ball Utah that we saw against UCLA versus, whatever it was that we saw in that first half. Again, though, that's something that needs to be cleaned up and something that needs to be figured out before you head into that Texas Tech game this upcoming week, because even though you will be at home and you have that home field advantage with all the Ute fans behind you, it'll be a tough test, right? And you're not going to have the luxury of just being able to get by scoring 3 points in that first half. You've got to be able to move the ball the way that you did in that first half, but end it with some scores. End it in the end zone.
Dampier tonight, 27 of 41, 230 yards through the air. He also added 13 carries for 86 yards on the ground. There's been a lot of talk about, is Dampier going to run it less this year because he probably doesn't have to carry the whole offense on his back. And frankly, I don't think that's the case. Okay, I phrased that poorly. I don't think it's the case that Dampier is not going to run it as much. I do think it's the case that he doesn't have to carry the offense on his back. And I don't think that's what he's doing. But I think that he is such a unique player, such a special player, that he is at his best when he is doing a lot of damage on the ground. And they brought up, of course, last year when he was with New Mexico and he played Wyoming, he put up over 200 yards rushing. And ultimately, New Mexico did lose that game, right? But they knew, Jay Sawville knew how dangerous Devin Dampier was, and they still couldn't limit him. 80 yards, 86 yards rushing. Like, that is still an incredible number from a quarterback. So, yeah, Dampier, it's pretty clear that they're going to use Dampier a lot on the ground, and I don't think that they are afraid to give him double-digit carries.
Yeah, and it's something we talked about in the preseason too a little bit when Devin Dampier is at his best when he's scrambling and when he's making plays happen, and when he's sometimes having to put on that Superman cape and making plays. That's what makes Devin Dampier so special. And so we talked about it. That's something you don't want to ultimately take out of his game. If you have the ability to limit it, and you're right, if guys like Wayshawn Parker are taking that load, if guys like Hunter Andrews are also taking a bulk of the running load, and guys like Nakari Rogers are taking a bulk of the running load, then that's perfectly fine, right? Rely on your running backs. But at the same time, you don't want to completely take it out of Devin Dampier's game because he's such an athlete, and that is what makes him so special. We're continuing to see electric runs from Devin Dampier, like similar to what we saw last season when he was at New Mexico, and I think that's phenomenal. But one of the things that I think sticks out to me when it comes to Devin Dampier, especially early on at this point of the season, is the fact that there was a lot of talk about him being 12-12, right, through the air.
Yeah,
no interceptions to talk about for Devin Dampier yet, man. He's been good. He's been good at securing ball security, right? He's been good at not turning the ball over. And that's something that's standing out to me right now, is the fact that he's been able to, at least up to this point, been able to clean up the INTs that we saw last season.
Yeah, and his completion percentage continues to sit at a really good number, 27-41, again, as we mentioned. And that's clear, you put that together with the no interception stat. And not only was it no interceptions, it never really felt like he put the ball in harm's way either, right? He's not pushing the ball into tight windows. He's not throwing into double coverage. He's not making dumb passes where it's like, dude, why the heck would you throw that? Like, he's just very quick, very efficient with his decision-making. And the biggest thing is sometimes the accuracy isn't always there, but then there are some times where he makes a throw and it's like, dude, that was a special play, right? So I really loved what I've seen from Dampier through 3 games as a Ute. I think he's been as advertised. I think he's been as dangerous on the ground as we all thought he was going to be. And then you throw in, again, he has the ability to make passes through the air, and he's continuing to build his chemistry. You see it there with Ryan Davis. You see it with Dallin Bentley. You're seeing it continue to build with Tobias Merriweather and a little bit with JJ Buchanan as well. So, I mean, if this continues to grow week by week by week, we really could see a Utah offense that is averaging like 35 points a game in Big 12 play.
Yes, and I think that's exactly where you would want to be if you're this Utah side, right? One, it's a complete contrast of what you saw last year. And ultimately, I think if you can average 35 points a game in conference play, that'll set you up in pretty good position to be in a spot where you are fighting for Arlington, fighting for a position where you're fighting for a chance to be in a Big 12 championship. And I think that's exactly what you want to see from Utah. I think obviously there's still moments where, you see Devin Dampier and his receivers not on the same page at times. And I think that's specifically with a guy like Tobias Merriweather, who I think up to this point, we still haven't seen him have the impact that I think a lot of people thought he was going to have. But I think ultimately that will come with time. As Devin Dampier and Tobias Merriweather continue to work, I think ultimately he will be able to get involved into the passing attack the way that maybe you see a Ryan Davis involved. But I think for now, Utah's doing what's necessary to get the ball moving, to be efficient and to be scoring touchdowns.
Well, and they play different roles, right? Ryan Davis is more of your quick slot dude. Get the ball to him fast, get the ball to him. Let him find the open spot in the defense's zones, right? He's going to get quick off the line, maybe 3 or 4 yards a catch, maybe a 10-yard out, whatever. Tobias Merriweather is more of the downfield threat, and he's got some speed too. So he's going to be running past defensive backs, and he's also going to be catching the ball over them eventually, right? It's just a matter of, again, building that chemistry. But you know what? I like that they're at least trying to get the ball to him, because that warns the defense. That establishes the threat, saying, hey, we've got this guy and we're going to throw to him. And if you're not careful, he is going to make you pay. And again, barely through his fingertips tonight, but eventually that's going to connect. And once that connects, the defense is going to have to account for it. And what happens when the defense is playing 2 high safeties? You've got 3 different running backs plus your quarterback that can all put up 80 rushing yards a game. And Utah's going to finish, again, 300 rushing yards on the night. That's awesome. I think that's textbook. That's exactly what Jason Beck wants. That's exactly what Kyle Whittingham wants. And you look at the time of possession, it's still in Utah's favor tonight. And that is the big stat, right? Kyle Whittingham wants to wear you down with his defense. And then his offense is just going to control the clock, and you can't score if you don't have the ball.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that right now Utah's missing offensively is just that deep threat, that guy over the top that you can throw down there and he's going to be able to blow the doors off some defenses. And I think that ultimately, and hopefully you can ultimately unlock that with Tobias Merriweather. But again, that's something that you hope will come with time for this offense, something that something that you hope that Devin Dampier and Tobias Mather will continue to work on, because that's one of the things that in a situation where Utah needs to go deeper, Utah needs to find a big play. That's something that right now is missing for this offense.
Yeah, longest catch of the night, 24 yards to Ryan Davis, funny enough, because we're talking about him being a short yardage receiver, right? But again, like he had a 24-yard reception, but then he still didn't break 100 on a night. So that's not – Ryan Davis is a very solid guy. He's more of a security blanket guy. He's not somebody that you're going to say, okay, Ryan, go out there and burn the defense. So that, I think, is the only thing that we haven't really seen from this offense through 3 games, is having a true deep threat. And I don't know if they maybe don't have one, or if it just hasn't been there, or hasn't been in the script, hasn't presented itself. But another thing I want to bring up, didn't see a ton of Smith Snowden tonight offensively, right? He had 2 rushes for 7 yards. He had, I think, 1 catch on the night for 3 yards. So only 3 touches today from Smith Snowden. This is a guy who's been near double-digit touches over the first 2 weeks, and maybe it's just a case of, hey, we've got a really big game next weekend. Let's not risk anything crazy happening, especially if, it doesn't feel like it's needed. So I don't know. Do you think we needed some more Smith, or do you think it was fine?
I think it was fine. It seemed at times that Wyoming defense was queued up on Smith Snowden, and they were ready for Smith Snowden. But again, we talked about in the earlier this morning in the pregame. This isn't a game where you necessarily needed to see Smith Snowden have as many touches and have as many plays as he did against UCLA, just because I think that you're at a point where you know what you're going to get out of Smith Snowden, and that opens up the game for guys like Hunter Andrews, right? Someone who maybe needed to prove themselves just a little bit more to go out and have the performances that he had tonight, right? You know what you're going to get from Smith. If you can limit him in any way against a team like Wyoming, I think that you should take that opportunity. And I'm ultimately glad that Utah did. That way Smith Snowden is a little bit more queued up and ready to go for that Texas Tech game.
You don't want Smith Snowden having to lock up, a receiver who just put up 100 yards after a game where Smith Snowden had to have 15 catches. You know what I'm saying? You want Smith Snowden to be out there fresh. And earlier, we were talking about defensively, the emergence of Jackson Benny and some of these other DBs allows Smith Snowden to play more on offense. But you can also sort of say the same thing about some of these other receivers stepping up. You've got Ryan Davis stepping up. You've got Hunter Andrews. I know that Nate Johnson didn't see the ball again after he fumbled, but it's clear that they want him to have some sort of role. And then not to mention, you've got a plethora of running backs that can run the ball. So I think that was my initial thought when we saw Smith Snowden taking snaps offensively, was like, maybe they just don't have very many playmakers. And now that you're starting to see guys step up and do really good things with the football, the offense is saying, you know what, Smith can do some great things, but so can these other guys. And let's let our offensive players do the offensive things. And if we need Smith in there, we'll throw him in there, but let's, keep him as fresh as we can.
100%. And again, it allows you to see guys like Hunter Andrews step in. And it's never a bad thing for Jason Beck to try to figure out how to feed every single guy, because he has a lot of weapons on that offense, right? So if you can limit Smith Snowden and allow yourself to feed other guys like a Dallin Bentley, like a Hunter Andrews, like the rushing monster that is Wayshawn Parker, Nakari Rogers, and Devin Dampier, then I think you'll absolutely take that.
Man, do you think that we're going to continue to see like an almost 50-50 split with Parker and Rogers? Parker had 10 carries tonight. Rogers had 13, by the way. Parker did finish with more yards, but Rogers had the touchdown. I like it. And I know that we assumed, I guess, that Wayshawn Parker was going to be the workhorse, and that's what it felt like initially in camp. But then you start to hear no, this is a 1A, 1B type of thing. And through these first 3 games, it really does seem like it is a true 1A, 1B sort of situation.
I think as long as those two are giving you the production that they're giving you, there's no need to switch it up, right?
Yeah.
If one of them maybe starts struggling, or if maybe one of them starts emerging above, the other one, then absolutely maybe it's time to reassess. But I think for the most part, if those two guys are giving you the type of production that they're giving you week in and week out, right? I loved what I saw from Wayshawn Parker tonight. I also enjoyed what I saw from Rogers tonight. And so if those guys are giving you that type of play every single week, then I don't think that there's too much of a need to change it, because in turn, right, the defense has to prepare themselves for different looks and different guys in the backfields. And I think that that can ultimately give you an edge if you're having the 1A, 1B. Plus, also in the long run, you think about health, you think about keeping those guys healthy, and at 100%, that also helps you in the long run doing so.
All right, Alex, let's do some offensive and defensive MVPs for this win. Of course, again, the Utes get the 31-6 win over Wyoming in Laramie. I'll tell you what, it was also nice. They're talking about how cold it is up there. Everybody's wearing coats and stuff, and I'm still sitting warmth in my house. Like, you know what? It's still nice and warm here in Utah. We're not suffering like they are up in Laramie.
We're not there yet. Give it a couple weeks, Christian, but we'll get there.
Offensive and defensive MVPs.
Offense, I'll go with the easy answer. Devin Dampier, 27 of 41 tonight, 230, 2 touchdowns, phenomenal throws in the red zone too on those scores. For me, the MVP, of course, on offense has to be Devin Dampier. On defense, I'll give it to John Henry Daly, who came up with the 2 sacks and 2 TFLs and a pass deflection as well, continuing to have the performances that he's having.
JHD.
There you
MVP.
go. Hashtag.
Say it with me. I want to hear you say it, Alex.
Hashtag JHD MVP. How about that?
I totally agree. He has been a monster throughout these first 3 weeks, and he continues to be an absolute game wrecker. I think it's fair to say that he's been the best player on Utah's defense so far this year, which is a really high bar because you've got other guys. I mean, Jackson Benny already has 2 interceptions, right? Lander Barton is all over the field. He's playing at an incredibly high level, but it's John Henry Daly who is cleaning up the scraps and making the big plays. And that the strip sack was awesome. That is one of my favorite plays in football, when you've got the defensive player reaching out and hitting it out of the quarterback's hand as he's cocking it back to throw. One of the coolest plays that you can have, like in slow motion, when you slow it down and replay it back, it looks awesome. So JHD MVP, great defensive performance. My offensive MVP, give me Hunter Andrews, man. He had, I'm not going to do math on air, but I'm going to say that he led the team in offensive production. He had 62 yards rushing, right? And then 44 yards receiving. So yeah, 96 total yards. Next closest, Ryan Davis had 91. But Hunter Andrews doing it through the air and on the ground. Kind of a fun little gadget player. Again, cool story. Committed as a linebacker, moved to running back, moved to tight end, and then they're like, you know what? Let's just try all of these different things. Wildcat quarterback. Like, this dude's doing it all. So I love it.
Great pick. And again, it's awesome to see him emerge, especially after the position changes.
Yeah. And he's clearly got a role, and they're going to keep feeding him. It doesn't look like we're going to get sound tonight from Coach Witt. It is tougher to get sound on the road games, so that is unfortunate. I was hoping to hear his post-game comments, but stay tuned on KSLSports.com on the podcast page. We have a Utah Sound page. I would imagine we're going to have that posted tomorrow. We're going to get it posted as soon as we get it, but unfortunately not going to play it live tonight on the post-game show. But nonetheless, Utah gets the win, 31-6. I do want to throw a quick plug. It sounds like we're going to be live from Roland Hall next week for the Ute pregame show. Of course, Texas Tech coming in, 10 a.m. kickoff at Rice-Eccles Stadium. You and I, Alex, are going to be down there starting at 8 at Roland Hall, getting everybody ready for Utah welcoming in Texas Tech to open up Big 12 play monster game. And I think next weekend is going to be a lot of fun.
100%. 8 a.m. We'll be there bright and early. If you have the opportunity while you're out there tailgating, come out, come say hi to me, Christian, and Alex Curie, who will be there, and come say hi. We'd like we like to interact with you guys. We like to get to know you, especially going through the comments that you guys leave on Twitter, on YouTube while we're doing these lives, and so we'd like to put names to some faces and get to meet all of you.
Yeah, that would be cool. Stop if you're we've got a lot of people dropping comments tonight. Shout out to everybody interacting with us. We love it. If you drop some comments, we'd love to have you stop by and tell us your your YouTube name or your Twitter name. Not only because it's cool to meet you, but I want to hear you say it like in front of your wife or something. Be like, yeah, you know, hey, I'm CE Sports from Twitter. You know?
Yes, so please stop by. We'll be again at Roland Hall on Guardsman Way, starting at 8 a.m. Stop by, say hi, stop by the KSL Sports Zone tent. We'll be there, and we'd love to get to meet. We'd love the chance to meet you.
We'll have donuts too.
There you go.
Donuts too. All right. Big win tonight for Utah, 3-0 on the year. We'll catch you next week. This has been the Ute Postgame Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.